Sometimes a Formula One team just comes up with something a little bit different. Something that leaves everybody either head-scratching or just wide-eyed in astonishment or amazement or just staggered at how weird it truly is. An example of this was the air scoop that appeared on the top of the McLaren in 2010. At first, nobody really knew what it was for, though some people thought it was just simply for cooling the driver down on hot days. This device, which became known as the F-duct due to its proximity to the letter F on a sponsor's sticker on the front of the car, was in reality the entry point to what engineers call a fluidic switch. McLaren were channeling air from the duct to the rear wing, stalling it at high speeds and reducing drag. It was an extremely clever way of achieving what we would now call the DRS effect. Rival teams soon worked out the trick and began to copy it. But while McLaren's drivers used their knees to activate the device using special knee pads, when rival teams copied the trick, they started to use the back of their specially modified gloves, taking their hands off the steering wheel at high speeds to activate it.
Here we see Fernando Alonso there, operating the left duct.
Something that many people said was dangerous. Eventually, these devices were banned ahead of the 2011 season. The Mercedes drivers were spotted in pre-season testing in 2020, pulling their steering wheels in a very strange way on the straights.
We have a system in the car, it's a novel idea, we've got a name for it, it's called DAS. It's simply switching the steering wheel from being able to move the wheels conventionally, left, right, left, right, and also unconventionally, in, out, where unconventional it moves the wheels in opposition to one another. And using the combination of those things, you get more opportunity as a driver than if you're stuck with just the left and right.
It was eventually banned. Everybody was in wide-eyed amazement at the start of the 2004 season. While most teams opted for a conventional, small, narrow nose, Williams arrived at the start of the season with a strange-looking wide nose, which was quickly dubbed the Walrus. It featured a short, stubby nose cone connected to the front wing by curved supports, which in theory allowed more air to flow under the car. In an effort to maximise the airflow, the front suspension was also designed around this concept, using twin keels underneath that nose and front chassis structure. It was radical, it looked strange, and ultimately, it didn't really work. By the mid-season point, the car was fitted with a conventional nose design, and with that fitted, that Williams went on to set the fastest ever lap recorded at an F1 Grand Prix weekend. In the early 1990s, one rear wing was not enough for some teams. Indeed, at times it seemed like the engineers had asked themselves, how big should our rear wing be? And the answer they found was simply yes. With the height and the width of the rear wing strictly limited and the trailing edges also strictly defined in the rules, the teams had no option in the never-ending quest for downforce other than to build an additional rear wing ahead of the main rear wing. It was ugly, and it was also effective. Soon almost every team on the grid had one, even the very smallest teams. It was cheap and dirty downforce, and the concept stayed in Formula One until the end of the 1994 season, when they were thankfully banned, and gave Formula One cars their beautiful clean lines once again. BMW's 2006 car didn't exactly have clean lines to start with, but when it rolled out of the pits for free practice at Magny-Cours, it didn't need to be particularly observant to notice that it had sprouted a pair of vertical aerodynamic elements. And these bits that stuck up from the top of the nose, well, they got right up the noses of the FIA, who banned them ahead of the next race. BMW had found that these devices that stick up helped with airflow over the rest of the car, similar to the horns on the roll hoop. But the FIA found that the devices obstructed the driver's vision and outlawed them. Following that race, the FIA insisted that unless any team concerned could clearly demonstrate to the satisfaction of the technical delegate and the stewards at the track that their driver's vision is not impaired in any way by such devices, no bodywork higher than the top of the front roll structure will be permitted forward of it. Devices like this were strictly banned. The double rear wings of the 1990s were nothing new. In the 1980s, a time of fairly wild experimentation, in Formula 1, teams like Tyrrell introduced additional rear wings on their cars. These extra wings took advantage of a loophole in the regulations. The regulations restricted the size and width of the rear wings behind the rear wheels, but they didn't say anything about wings mounted in front of the rear wheels. The rule makers hadn't considered that anyone might even contemplate mounting a wing forward of the front wheels. But that's exactly what the teams did. They used huge sweeping end plates to achieve the effect. Other versions also appeared on extensions to the rear wing end plates on some other cars, with mini wings hanging off them. Once again, just in the zone ahead of the rear wheels to ensure that they were legal. These extra wings were very effective, and drivers like Toleman's Ayrton Senna used them to great effect. There are times that rule changes have unintended consequences, and a tweak to the safety regulations in 2014 saw many cars with weird-looking nose extensions covering the front impact structures, but no car designs were quite as striking, visually at least, as the Caterham. When it was first launched, the assembled media gasped in horror at the car's looks, and ahead of the first race, the team actually painted the nose tip black to hide its modesty somewhat. The Caterham was not a front-running car and never scored a point, while some teams like Caterham did try to hide their appendages in 2014, others flaunted them. Strange noses are of course nothing new in Formula 1. At Monaco in 2001, the Arrows team, who were engaged in that never-ending quest for front downforce, added an additional front wing, mounted on the tip of the nose and raised high up on stilts. The team tried the car with and without the extra wings, and found that the extra wings actually worked and did increase front grip. Arrows was not alone though. The Jordan team had also exploited the same loophole, and mounted a single element wing on a still just ahead of the cockpit. The FIA was not exactly keen on these designs and told the teams to remove them on the grounds of safety, though most people believed that really they'd been asked to remove them on aesthetic grounds. Caterham's 2014 nose was not the weirdest on display that season. That dubious honour must go to the Lotus Renault E22 with its clever twin nose. What the Enstone-based team had realised that there was nowhere in the technical regulations that it stated that a car needed to have only one front impact structure. So what the team did was fit two unequal length tusks to the front of its car, which complied with the rules and also, they felt at least, gave an aerodynamic gain. For the 2015 season, the rules were changed to ban noses like this and in theory make the cars look a bit nicer. In 1998, many teams copied a device first seen on the 1997 Tyrrell, or rather a pair of devices, small winglets mounted high above the car on stilts, mounted to the top of the side pods. Most teams used a single inner support, resulting in a look rather like a misplaced golf club, but Jordan alone used twin supports. As the wings sprouted up and down the grid, many in the sport felt that they were making the cars deeply ugly, and eventually, and thankfully, the FIA banned them, as ever, on safety grounds. Halfway through the 1978 season, the Formula 1 circus arrived in Sweden, and the Brabham BT46B made its first and only appearance. When it arrived, the rear of the car attracted huge attention from rival teams, but its true secret was actually concealed underneath an old dustbin lid bolted onto the back of the car. Rival teams like Lotus and Tyrrell tried to extract the secrets of the design from its creator, but when the dustbin lid was finally removed, the true extent of the engineering innovation was revealed. This was a fan car, which used a giant aerodynamic fan to suck the air out from underneath the car and boost its downforce levels a huge amount. As rivals Lotus looked on in the knowledge that their own fan car was actually already on the drawing board, the Brabham proved to be a hugely effective design, and it went on to win the race. However, after the race, the team was advised never to bring the car back to the track. While the fan car was not formally banned right away, the Brabham team boss, Bernie Ecclestone, was advised strongly not to bring the car back for political reasons, because it would have damaged his chances of setting up the Formula One Constructors Association. Ecclestone never brought the car back, and fan cars were formally banned at the end of the year.